Now, guys, we go to my exclusive sit-down with President Vучić in Belgrade. Enjoy. President Vучić, thank you so much for being here. I'd love to get your perspective as we watch the turmoil that you see across Europe right now. Seems like entire existences are going. Where does Serbia stand in all of that and in contrast to what we see, perhaps more so in Western Europe?
Thank you very much for having me, dear Don, and just would like to present in few sentences. Serbia is non-EU country in the Western Balkans, Southeast Europe, which is confusing a bit for the Americans in particular, but it's a country that is on EU path. But our country was #2 fastest growing economy last year. This year we believe that Serbia is going to be #1 fastest growing economy in Europe. And in the recent years we really made a big economic development and a big impact on people's living standards as well. Of course, situation is never ideal and you can always criticize many things, but generally speaking, we are heading, or Serbia is on a right path. Let me define it this way. But yeah, we do invest hugely into infrastructural works. We do try to attract a lot of foreign direct investments, and we've been doing that successfully in the recent years. And on the other hand, we still brag ourselves of having an independent and sovereign approach towards international political events, actors, and also ideas. And that's what, in a way, makes a difference between us and at least many European Union countries. On the other hand, there are a few countries in Europe that are facing protests right now. One out of these countries is Serbia. Big protests against us because of that canopy fall that happened on November the 1st.
Get into the details of that, because it feels to me, as someone who's watched this play out in America and with my family, a tragic incident, of course, but it was later weaponized, perhaps like our January 6th, turned into something that it wasn't, to incite potentially even a revolution.
I was saying the same to my people here. What happened on January the 6th for Donald Trump, for all of you, dear Don, it was for me in a way November the 3rd, when one tragic accident, which happens all over the world, like it happened after President Trump was inaugurated this year with that helicopter and plane, and it happens with even bigger number of casualties. And it was used in a way that I couldn't believe it against the government, although prosecutor's office indicted all the people that they thought would have been responsible for that. We did our job. We fulfilled all the requests, all the demands made by students here, but it was not enough. And I realized that, let's say, mid-December, a month and a half after, then I realized that it was an ongoing colored revolution, imported revolution, something that you couldn't handle easily, and it was not easy. It's still not easy, but I believe that we are on a very good path to overcome it successfully and victoriously. It was a huge amount of money that was invested from outside. Different foundations, different agencies, because nobody wanted to see. There are three reasons why they wanted to destabilize Serbia. Number one was Serbia was performing better than the others in the region. Well, that was not a good sign for the others that didn't want it to have that disbalance. On the other hand, Serbia was having its own independent policy, which was, yes, we were on Ukrainian side when we discussed territorial integrity and incursion issue and everything else, but we were the only country that was not imposing sanction against Russia, because Clinton administration was imposing sanctions against us, and we still remember that, and that was one of the main reasons why we didn't want to do it.
I want to ask about that later on as well.
Yeah,
because...
but I'm saying this, all this stuff were quite a reason to go against this government from outside, and we were not always very much obedient like most of the others in Europe. And we are a small country, we cannot easily oppose to that, we couldn't repel that easily, but now I really believe that at least in the days to come it'll be all over this or another way, but I think, and I'm very much prudent and very much cautious, I think that we are going to win, because I see the clear will of Serbian people which is on our side. It doesn't mean that they like me or they dislike that and that guy, no.
Correct.
It means that people would like to have peace, stability, and to decide on their future in elections. In the election process, not in the streets, not under the influence of some foreign countries and everything else.
Well, there's another planned protest in a couple of days. How much of that is manufactured? I've read and I've seen and spoken to other people here. Some of these protests, they're offering kids €100 to show up, and then they'd have a fake social media account of a good-looking woman saying, you're a 10 if you show up to the protest. And so kids are basically showing up to a party that they may not even know. But then once it's manipulated through the lens of a media, through perhaps the EU, who would much rather control everything through Brussels rather than allow actual sovereignty of a nation, that image is shaped differently to the rest of the world.
You, dear Don, mentioned some of this stuff. There are so-called, I'm not an expert on this, but they told me so, and they showed me some proofs. These are cell phone or IT farms, how to create, how to boost all this stuff against the leaders during the protests and during all these events. But the real issue is that if you analyze one thing, and I'm absolutely certain that your father and, let's say, Elon Musk and some other guys, they can recognize it easily. When you see an entire liberal establishment from Washington and New York and LA going against you, and you see that there is no single NGO that was on your side, and you see the same in Serbia, can you imagine that all these NGOs that were participating these events in Serbia were paid from outside, from United States, from USAID, National Endowment for Democracy, and some other organizations. And I don't say that they were using this money only for that. They were using money for everything.
But also for that.
But also for that.
So USAID, and I think Americans have been watching some of the disgraces, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars blown for things
hundreds of millions
can't have any possible benefit to Americans or probably anywhere else in the world. Trans Elmo in Guatemala is probably not all that important, but maybe I'm wrong. But you're saying that was even playing here in an also political fashion. Maybe they were doing some good, but...
Yes, exactly. What I'm saying, we were listening to the President Trump, and he was saying, he was actually mentioning Serbia, saying there were, USAID was spending 14 million on public procurements. Okay, but they were spending much more money, which was not public procurements, which was NGOs that became very instrumental in any kind of political crisis. And they have always been choosing the side that was anarcho-liberal, that was so-called green, but just so-called, and always against the leaders that would have kept sovereignty and independence of the country and of the nation. And interfering into all our election processes through all these NGOs that were allegedly presenting their agenda as someone that was independent, that someone that was not actually involved in the process, but they were so deeply involved into the process. Then supporting the medias that were always against the government. And I don't understand what was that good for the American citizens regarding these issues.
Has your government made requests to figure out where this money is going? Because it seems like a reasonable question if they're interfering in your elections to find out.
Yeah, that's what we wanted to do, and we faced an avalanche of criticism, even coming from some sources from the deep state of your country, but from Brussels in particular. In particular, there is no single clerk in Brussels that was not criticizing us on a fact. We did not detain anyone. We did not detain anyone. There has been no apprehension, arrests, nothing. Our prosecutor's office wanted to scrutinize their financial activities, and that's it, how they were spending that money, and how they were using that money. And after they did it, all of a sudden everybody started attacking us and protesting every single day. Like you must not ask, you have no right to ask someone. We can ask you, you can ask us, everybody can ask everybody in the world, apart from NGOs that are like blessed by someone and protected by liberal world, because if you touch them, if you ask them, okay, is it rainy day or it's a sunny day, you made the most terrible mistake and you are going to be crucified by them. And this is something what is happening to us now. But we'll finish our job. We'll finish our job, and you'll be very surprised with the results, because I got some information, but I need a confirmation to say it publicly. You'll be very, very surprised, and it'll be helpful to President Trump very much in the next period to show what was the purpose of that money, and it can happen to you and to him again, because they're going to use the same sources against you.
They don't seem to have a very creative playbook, and it seems like whether it's yourself, whether it's Viktor Orban, whether it's my father, anyone who's adhering to the notion of sovereignty, perhaps the notion of traditional Western values, that becomes the enemy of all of these. The American left, the de facto American left, which is USAID functioning abroad, and you mentioned the EU. You're obviously not a part of the EU, but you've seen what happens as these nations sort of bind into one blob and they lose their own identity. Talk a little bit about the difference between Serbia and some of the other nations that have held fast versus Western Europe that's been sort of absorbed by that mindset.
We are on EU path and we respect EU, but the real issue is that they from time to time expect from us to be, I think. And my question to them has always been, then why do you need our government? Why do you need any government in the region? Because they have always been criticizing us because of those sanctions against Russia that we did not impose. They were saying to us, you are aligned 52, 54, 56% with us. I said, okay, yes, it means that we have our government, our own government, run by our people. And then they were saying to me, but you need to be aligned 100% like all the others. And my question was, why would we need a government? If you bring all decisions instead of us, we don't need Ministry for Foreign Affairs. We don't need many ministers. And that's it. And there is no response from their side when I say something like that. And you're absolutely right. It's the same type of playbook against Viktor, against myself, against Robert in Slovakia, and against some other guys. And it's always the same. And we see it now. you know, in last 4 months, we didn't use force at all against demonstrators. Not at all. Nothing. Zero. Actually, if you see the protests in the other countries, in Western Europe, sorry that I'm using this word, but they beat a shit out of these people that are protesting against themselves.
Well, they're jailing people for opinion.
Yep.
In Germany, they're jailing people for saying there's two genders or misidentifying a lunatic.
And I say the same, that we have two genders. Maybe that's also a big hurdle or a big problem for me.
You obviously don't trust the science.
Yes, you're right. I don't
understand. It stood for hundreds of years.
And I don't know in Serbia, not to mention in English. I don't know in Serbian how do they call this third gender, or I don't know what else. I don't know.
Yes.
I really don't, and I don't want to know. Maybe I'm stupid, maybe I'm crazy. I know that there are two genders. I was born like that. Now everything.
I think you're right, but
there are a few people that
the NGOs would disagree with us, which is why they're spending tens of millions of dollars pushing it in other countries.
If you go to some other countries like Germany, it's not USAID that was even the biggest. From Brussels, from let's say from Green Party, from their foundation, from Socialist Foundation, their foundations, they were financing everything here. And it was all just a cover for political activism financing here. Just a cover. And not only that, but also from Brussels and from many European capitals as well. And that's what they were doing against your father all the time. All European mainstream medias were launching terrible campaigns against him without even asking him or giving him a chance to just say that he was ruining values, ruining that and that, and there has never been values, because they were always insisting on values. When you come to values, there are no values. Can I tell you one? Just for your people, because everybody knows it here in Serbia. I'll tell you, dear Don. You hear when Marco Rubio, when he says, well, Ukraine will have to do something to compromise or whatever. Then they say, but who are you to do something against territorial integrity of Ukraine? You, Donald Trump, are going to ruin all the values of contemporary world. And then when they see me, they always stop saying that. You know why? Because I always say to them, really, you speak about territorial integrity, but why you Europeans, together with Bill Clinton in 1999, why you violated an international public law, brought a decision without any voting within UN Security Council, and you were bombarding this country and then changing the borders of this country. Changing the borders of this country, which means that you didn't care about territorial integrity at that time, but now when you care about it, when it's in your interests, and I have nothing against Ukraine, to tell you the truth, nothing at all, but when you changed your rules and your values, you stick to the values.
Do as I say, not as I do.
Exactly, exactly. When it fits to them, then they have these values. When it doesn't fit to their interests, well, just put it aside or cover it with something else.
So in the big picture, I mean, that was 1999. Bill Clinton decided to bomb Serbia,
Yes.
unilaterally, to your point, without real consent from the rest of the world. Was that a distraction to what was going on in his personal life at the time?
No, dear Don, I'm not speaking, and I'm not exposing my opinion. What I'm going to say are facts. Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, just once or twice Montenegro as a part of Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, and a Serbian inhabited part of Montenegro in the north. And Serbia itself was bombarded by 19 NATO countries. 19 NATO countries attacked small Serbia. Because they were saying that we were violating an international public law. Now you're going to hear something for the first time in your life, that we were violating an international public law in a part of our territory with the possible, in the future, humanitarian crisis that we might cause. That was the reason for bombardment.
So it was preemptive?
Exactly, but please, then Putin learned something from that. And when the crisis started in Donbas region, he said exactly using the same words. Well, you see, it's going to be a massive humanitarian crisis. Ukrainians are jeopardizing Russian-speaking people in East Ukraine, and we had to intervene using exactly the same narrative, exactly the same language as it was used against us. He did it smartly. If I were him, would have done the same.
Yeah.
I disagreed with that.
Yeah. That's not being an apologist, that's just understanding.
Yeah, just put it rationally.
Yeah.
And that's it. And now when they say to him, you cannot take Crimea, you cannot take Kherson, you cannot say that and that. He's going to say, which is also not good for us, but he's going to say, but you did it with Kosovo. And what is going to be their answer? I'll tell you. Well, that's not the same. That was a real humanitarian disaster. And he's going to say, this was even bigger, much bigger humanitarian disaster. And this is what I wanted to show it to you. And is the fact that people actually, when it's good for them, when it suits them well, they're okay with international public law. When it doesn't fit them, when it doesn't suit them well, who cares about it? But if you do it once, then you cannot speak about the real values or constant values.
Correct.
And don't lecture all the others. And that's it. And this is all what I said about it. It's completely true. It's completely true.
So you've had a lot of pressure to normalize relations with Kosovo.
Yes.
There's a lot of pressure coming from all different parts of the world. How does that actually look? How does that work in reality versus perhaps, again, the narrative that's put out there that this would be something that is simple? What is that message?
Thank you for asking me that. Unlike guys from Pristina, I'm not going to criticize them and to use this opportunity to say something bad about them. I'm going to say that we are still under big pressure on this issue. Everybody or many people wants to undermine our territorial integrity, our constitution and everything else. But the real thing is that we wanted always, and we have always been open to get us closer to a consensus or arrangement between us and Pristina, but it had to be, or it has to be, a sort of a compromising solution. It cannot be one-sided. And during the first tenure of your father, we discussed that with Rick, with O'Brien and the others, and Rick Grenell was insisting on economy, and I like that idea because that was Donald Trump's idea. And when I entered the Oval Office, the second question, after asking me about China something, the second question was economy, direct flights, that's what you guys need to do. And I immediately agreed with that, because I understood that he noticed that it was very complicated from political point of view, because he cannot change absolutely everything in American politics from the past, and he wanted to also not to hurt us even more. And he wanted to find something that would be out of the box. Solution based on a better economy in the region, open borders and everything else. Speak about an entire region. But as a matter of fact, Europeans were going strongly against that arrangement. We call that Washington arrangement. And
why? Because they thought that they were much smarter, that it was a superficial approach, or they wanted to have steering wheel in their hands. Well, it seems like if we're talking about Bill Clinton and mistakes, he's the guy that said it's the economy, stupid. If everyone's benefiting, you would think that they would go along with that, or are they better off with a fragmented?
I just don't understand why people in the region did not accept fully the idea of an open Balkan, which we discussed, and it was fully supported by the Americans and even by the other administration, democratic administration, because they were getting some impulses and signals from Europe not to go with it. I don't know.
Is that about limiting your success because you've gone against the grain?
Partly, at least partly, yes, I believe so.
How has, that bombing from 1999, how has that shaped sort of the values of Serbians today? I mean, did that change the mindset and the ethos of how their worldview is?
Very much, very much. People here, they live a sort of Western way of life. But since Trump appeared on a political scene, Serbs didn't believe to any other political leaders from the United States. Now there is a big shift and a big change. Trump became very popular in Serbia, and this was the country where Trump was enjoying the biggest popularity in entire Europe by far.
What were those?
I'll tell you. You see, Viktor is my friend, my brother.
Yeah.
Viktor Orban.
Orban,
yes.
Hungary.
But in Hungary, it was, just because of his party, a bit bigger popularity of Trump than of Joe Biden. Here in Serbia, it was, at least, speaking about determined people, 78 to 79% on Donald Trump's side. Oh. At least. And no one can deny it. Today, these numbers are even bigger, because we had huge expectations. Now they are even bigger than huge. And there has already been some fulfillments of that. And people here, they like sovereign leaders, but that are not afraid of that liberal pond, which is criticizing everybody and everything that they cannot control, and that's why people like him very much. And he is the first American president that is predominantly loved by people of this country, and that's a big shift, big change.
Interesting.
Huge one. And I'm not, as you know, we discussed everything. I'm not flattering him, I'm not flattering you. I'm saying what people here think. I think even better than that, because he is changing something even more important than people could have imagined. He is changing the way of thinking. He is going against the mainstreams. He is doing something against the deep state, which was unimaginable. And I'm not sure that he'll be 100% successful on this, because it's impossible. But what he tried, what he did, was something of an utmost importance, not only for the United States of America, but for many freedom-loving countries. Here, in Asia, in Africa. Did I tell you that, because I'm from the very small country, relatively or very popular in China. Do you know that apart from all the tariffs and everything else, Donald Trump is 10 times more popular than his predecessor? And I know it, I know the figures. In China.
Oh. I wouldn't have thought that, but maybe they too hope for some freedom and the ability to say what they want. And
I can tell you why. They respect someone who speaks sincerely. Chinese people are very serious people, good people. They respect, okay, you're our opponent, you think differently. But when we hear you, when we understand what you want, doesn't matter we can respect it. And that's a different type of attitude.
I think it's important. Do you think they respect some of the other leaders of Europe when they look at it? Because it feels like it'd be hard to. I don't take so many of these people anymore as serious people.
Chinese show respect to everybody, but I see the difference between real respect and an alleged or diplomatic or protocolarian one.
Mm-hmm. What were your thoughts about the infamous now meeting in the Oval Office between my father, J.D. Vance, some of that team, and Zelensky in terms of trying to come up with a settlement?
Zelensky is a very smart guy, very intelligent person. I met him 9 or 10 times. He was doing something for his political position in Ukraine. Smartly done. He went back as a hero to Kiev, and his numbers were, as your father was saying it in a very proper way, not very good, but that was one of the reasons why he did it. Protecting Ukraine from everyone, even from the United States of America, doing that and that. That was number one. Number two, my friend Zelensky, I think that you can accept his apology on this, because I think that he did not act fully in a rational way. Mm-hmm. Because when you see the President of the United States, particularly a guy that is determined and decisive, that knows the politics, that knows his aims, like Donald Trump, you need to understand your position as well. And you are not equal. And you know, people here were, I'll tell you the story, people here were criticizing me because when I was at that Oval Office, Donald brought, or his people brought, like a tiny chair for me like this one. And I looked like a kid, you know, he was having that big armchair, you know, like a king sitting above me, you know, and people were saying, you humiliated us, you did that and that. And I was thinking about it. And I said to myself, hey, this is Donald Trump. This is the President of the United States of America. You can sit, you can lay down, you can do whatever you want. You have to show respect to him, and you have to fight for your people, for the benefits, for the sake of your people, Serbian people. And I was doing that. I was doing that. And I saw no problems on that. And I was shocked when people, and Maria Zakharova from Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs attacked me like I was humiliated by American president and that and that. It was not. He was very friendly treating me, very friendly. We were discussing even some private issues and everything else. He was catching everything in a minute. Mm-hmm. He couldn't know all the details from the Balkans. Of course. You know it because you spend more time here and you do understand that. But he caught absolutely everything in 2-3 minutes. Mm-hmm. And you see the real talent. And you see, I notice how he works and how he brings his decisions and everything else. But your job is to, if I were Zelensky, would have listened, would have, of course, when camera were turned off.
That's number one. Don't renegotiate a deal with Trump on camera, because that's not going to work out well.
When cameras are switched off, then discuss whatever you want. Then discuss whatever you want. That's what I was doing. That's what I was doing. It's not a show for everybody. Your job is to take care of your people. That's it. That's what I would have done differently.
What does that roadmap to peace look like for you? You know, if you were in his spot, you've spent time with Zelensky, you've spent time with Putin.
Twice more with Putin.
Twice more with Putin. You understand both. You understand both sides of the spectrum. I feel like in America it's difficult because I feel the media has programmed the American people to think that Ukraine is winning and they should be able to get everything. It's probably not realistic, but that makes me an apologist.
I cannot discuss wishful way of thinking because I'm too pragmatic, too rational. I'll tell you, I think it's the worst job in your father's hands and would never like and would never dare to do anything like he wants to resolve, because I know how complicated that is. But my response is going to be very simple. Someone has to start losing in a very clear way. Not in a clear way, but in a very clear way, doesn't matter which side, in order to get us closer to peace.
Well, I think that's right. And I think that has everything to do with the money.
Of course, that's a part of a job, and that's a part of a war.
Do you feel that if this was a conflict that wasn't basically between two Eastern European nations and there was, say, an ethnic minority involved, and perhaps you've dealt with some of that, at least in the history of this country, that there'd be more clamoring to peace? Because I found it fascinating, even during the early part of the election cycle, when my father said his only objective was to get to peace. And, you know, the geniuses at CNN said, "How dare you? We just wants to stop the death," was his exact quote. "I just want to stop the death."
But nobody is interested in peace, actually, apart from Donald Trump.
Russia's rebuilt their economy because of a war. The sanctions jacked up fuel prices. Zelensky's probably stealing a lot of it, at least in my opinion. You can't say that because you're his friend, but
Russians are doing very good stuff on their military industry. Of course, they had, and they still have, some economic issues to resolve it. But Ukraine was losing many people, as many as Russians, and at the same time they were losing territory, but they were losing their economy and they were losing their future, because there are more than 7-8 million people, or even 10 million people, that left the country. I cannot say for good, but it's very doubtful whether those people will come back ever or not. And on the other hand, what I see is that Russia calmed down all internal disputes on this issue. They are doing better and better in a battlefield, and I think that peace is of an utmost importance for all of us. How Donald Trump will contribute to finishing this war, I don't know. But I keep my finger crossed, and God bless him if he does it, because that would save the world, because it was not Russia-Ukraine war. It was a war of half of the world participated in that war. Everybody was pretending that world was not participating. And when you hear, I heard from many presidents and prime ministers in Europe, we must not lose this war. And I said, good. Then Putin was saying the same, we must not lose this war. Then Zelensky was saying the same, we must not lose this war. But okay, then nobody loses this war, but just make a peace.
What does victory look like? And that's what no one has articulated to me.
And at the end, everybody will claim victory, and everybody will feel victorious. But as a matter of fact, no one is going to be the real victor.
Well, I think stopping the death is victory in and of itself. Now, we argue about territory.
Absolutely right about it.
What Americans don't know is that a vast majority of eastern Ukraine would probably be perfectly comfortable being part of Russia.
I can tell you, even during that in Bosnia, when we came to Dayton Peace Accord in 1995, that was very helpful, because the war was stopped, at least. Whether I agree or disagree with that doesn't matter, put it aside, but the war stopped. If you'll be able to stop the war in Ukraine, everybody will say, many thanks to the United States of America, many thanks to President Trump. God bless him, he saved us all. He saved us all. Because that will be a big boost for the European economy. European growth rate this year is going to be 0.2. With 0.2, what you can do?
Not a lot.
Not a lot.
Especially not with the migrant crisis.
Not a lot. With all the other crises as well. political and all the others. That's why we need to stop this war, and I see that they are not interested in having truce or ceasefire or whatever, but
well, they were interested in prolonging the war. I saw the statistics last week. The vast majority of Europeans wanted to keep fighting. The problem is that statistic changed the second they were asked, were they willing to actually help contribute and pay for it? So, that's wonderful. I'd love to create world peace. I may not, or world hunger. I'd love to end it, but I'm not going to give up a meal.
Yes, and you might add even their participation in that war. And then nobody will be in favor of that. Because it's easy when someone else is dying, and when someone else is paying the price. And you are not doing it, but because of your global or regional interests, you would like to see more of a war, which is very hypocritical, to tell you the truth. And you can see it in a very easy way. It's present all over the continent.
Well, hypocrisy is getting very common these days. Tell me, one of your neighbors, a lot has been going on in their election process over in Romania. Do you have any insight into that? Because as an American, you see at least the conservative candidate is thrown off a ballot. I'm sure there's more nuance to that than that, but
I can tell you, I'm not an expert on Romania. I don't understand Romanian language, because apart from Romanian and Hungarian language, I do understand all the other regional languages.
I speak fluent Czech, so
from Bulgarian to Slovenian language, I do understand. It's Serbo-Croat or Serbian and Croatian, whatever languages. We all do understand these languages, and this is one of the hurdles which I'm facing when I want to understand more of Romanian politics. But I can tell you something, not hiding anything. I have many friends in Romania, including, I believe, our common friend Victor Ponta. He is an honorable man. But also, I cannot imagine, I have never spoken to Calin Georgescu. Never, ever. Never. And would like to speak to him as well. But the real issue for me is that, I don't understand, and I don't want to interfere into their internal relationship furthermore. I don't understand why they did not allow him to candidate himself, but maybe they are even right. Maybe I don't know something. What was that all about?
Do you think it's some of the same forces that are creating the noise
Romania,
here? I mean, again, you have a protest coming up in a couple of days, and
I have it every single day.
Funded by the Soros groups or whatever it may be. And do you think that's happening there, and it's just anything that could take out a potential?
I have the protests every single day here, all around the country. And as you can see, not only that I'm still alive, I'm still by far the most popular politician in this country, by far. And it's not about protesting, it's about someone's programs, plans, political ideas. And if you ask me whether it's the same kitchen like it was happening in Moldova, in Georgia, in Hungary, yeah, I believe so. It doesn't mean that I'm fully right, because I don't know many things about Romanian political landscape, but that's how it looks.
Do you feel that perhaps you see all the flight from ActBlue, obviously the big Democrat funder in the United States? Do you think that with the cutoff of the USAID funds and all of those, there's a reason that those people are fleeing? Because again, it was the NGOs kicking back to these organizations illegally?
That's a big deal here. That's a big deal here. And these people that were very well paid, they became very nervous. And that's why they would like to come to power here or to keep the power somewhere else, because they need it very much, because they are not going to spend your taxpayers' money. They will have to earn it differently in the future, which is not always as easy as it looks. They are not used to market terms.
Yeah, well, I guess when you're playing with house money or other people's money, it's easy to continue a war, just like the Europe mentality in Ukraine, right? If America's big and dumb and they'll pay for it indefinitely, it's not the end of the world. I will ask, though, this summer I went at a speaking tour across a lot of even Eastern Europe. I think a lot of people, similar mindset to me. But there was this notion even in these rational places, perhaps here, certainly in Romania, that if you don't figure out Ukraine, Russia's going to sweep through the rest of Europe. As an American, I find that almost absurd, but it was a genuine concern for them. I don't think they've necessarily overperformed in this war. I certainly don't think they'd want the actual full force of NATO. There is something to be said about if NATO doesn't carry their weight, why should America be doing that? And those were all written deals that the rest of the EU hasn't, or the rest of NATO hasn't lived up to.
I'm not going to take a lot of your time. We'll tell you the story. 3 years ago, when Russian-Ukrainian war started, since then I was attacked more than 10,000 times in Western liberal medias for the alleged fact that Serbia was going to attack neighboring countries because Vучić became an imperialist. Now they compare me with Trump, Putin, and the others.
Wait, so you're with Trump and Putin as an imperialist. Yes. Any other imperialists?
Erdogan.
Erdogan? Okay.
Yes, that's what they say. Yeah. 4 of us last evening on German ARD main television, we were shown as symbols of imperialism. And you know what is really hypocritical? Why I'm an imperialist? And then I can tell you why Donald Trump is an imperialist. Because I didn't take any other territories. We lost our territory from their point of view. Mm-hmm. We didn't take any. But I still did not agree with them that we should have lost that territory. And that's why I'm an imperialist. Donald Trump is an imperialist because he wants to defend an American interest and he wants to get something for American people. Okay. But they always need it. But they were saying for 3 years that we were going to attack someone in the region. And we didn't do it. And do you believe that none of these big papers, big outlets, was saying, sorry or excuse us, Mr. President, we were lying about you for 3 years?
I'm not shocked at all, actually.
None of them.
I've been dealing with this for 9 years now.
Yeah, it's like a very crazy situation. If you deny everything, if you try to defend yourself, you always become too defensive, and then people say something's wrong with this guy. Mm-hmm. And you don't know how to act on this. And then I don't care anymore. They can write whatever they want, they can say whatever they want. Like I saw that campaign against you after you visited, we say it here, Gothob, or I don't know how do you say it in English, in Greenland.
Oh, Greenland.
When I saw that, I immediately knew that they were lying something because it was too harsh, viciously harsh against you.
Yeah.
In a very stupid way.
Well, they actually went on the record say that I was there bribing drug addicts in the streets. First of all, it's minus 32 degrees. There's no drug addicts in the streets. But I was bribing them to show up to a
But you were cravingly trying. You were so eager to meet drug addicts. And they found all those drug addicts at Greenland, with 56,000 people. Come on, and that's how it works in their liberal bubbles all over the world,
Yeah, you're guilty if they accuse you of something, and you're also guilty if you fight back.
Yes, and then
you're even more guilty if you fight back.
Yeah, exactly, because you have no right to strike back. If you are obedient enough, if you are silent, quiet, then we can forgive you something. But if you strike back, if you fight back, and now we're gonna kill you, and that's it.
But I also feel like even if you're not going to win everything, and not every hill is the hill to die on. It feels to me, and I've seen this in my own dealings when I was accused of being a Russian spy or traitor or whatever, who knows.
Welcome to club.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, for me, I considered it a great honor.
For me, they were saying that I was a member of that Russian club, but that very recently when they wanted to say that I became a traitor, I became member of the American and European club and all the others. I'm changing, shifting the camps, that's it.
Their attack on me, to me, was an honor because it meant I'm always over the target, right? So that I was onto something. It was a little bit preposterous, but it didn't matter. But I think what I learned in that lesson is when they started it, I came right out of the gate. I went on TV that night, a very open book, and even my lawyers, you can't say that. They'll put you in jail. And they were trying. But I think the point that they then came to me 2 years later, you know what, Don, you were right to fight, because if you curled up in a ball and put your thumb in your mouth and cry for mom, that's the admission of guilt. That's when they even go harder.
They would have.
So you can't win.
They would have so far suffocated you if you were acting like that. And they were right, your lawyers.
I'll say, I understand I'm not the upstanding citizen that Hunter Biden is.
When you have your own ideas, when you have something that you believe that is worthy to fight for, then you have to express it freely, openly, sincerely. And then people will like it. Because whether they're gonna do a lot of scoffing, whether they're gonna rebuke you from the moral pedestal or whatever, doesn't matter. If you're a stick to your own ideas, to your own beliefs, then no one can hurt you. And these are my principles.
What's the future of Western Europe look like? It feels like Eastern still has at least a foothold in reality and in tradition and in identity. What are your thoughts on
Western Europe? I can tell you, I hope that Western Europe will revive its economy. That's important for us because we are partly dependent on their growth. Mm-hmm. That's what I hope. And I hope that politics-wise, they will be changed a lot in the future. And I hope that the influence of the United States and Donald Trump will work, in a sense, to get to the point where many things are going to be different than they are today.
Well, we appreciate you having the guts to actually say that out loud. If other leaders did the same, I think we'd make a lot of progress towards those goals.
I always say what I think, and I don't care what the others will say about it.
Me too. President Vujicić, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Pleasure.